Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of our short talks. If you're joining us for the first time and you've just kind of landed on our kind of social media, or you found us on YouTube, our short talks are kind of a way for us to explore the Methodist way of life, what it means for us as Methodists to live out our calling as followers of Jesus in the contemporary world. And so each month we take a theme of our calling, we take a theme of the Methodist way of life, and we drill a bit deeper into that theme, kind of looking and exploring about different facets of what that looks like for us in our discipleship, in our following of Jesus. This month, in January, we're looking at creation and creation care as part of our discipleship. And I am very privileged to be joined by Jack Wakefield from Tear Fund, which is an organisation which kind of touches upon some of this stuff. But I don't want to spoil that. I don't want to kind of give too much away. Jack, would you just mind giving us a little bit of a bit of an overview of who Tear Fund are and what Tear Fund do?
Yeah, sure. So Tear Fund is a Christian development charity. So we're working in over 50 different countries, partnering with local churches to help see communities and people lifted out of poverty and able to reach their God-given potential. So we are passionate about seeing an end to extreme poverty. But what we've noticed over the years is actually the ways we've damaged God's creation is making it harder for people to lift themselves out of poverty or pushing them back into it. And so a developing strand of our work is thinking about how creation care fits into this mission for justice and for an end to extreme poverty.
Yeah, and I suppose thinking a bit about this, the kind of the global picture of climate change, of climate justice, we often hear about the fact that we need to sort of either recycle more, to walk more, to lessen our carbon footprint. But I suppose sometimes it might be difficult for us here in our context in the UK to maybe be able to understand some of that global picture. Are you able to maybe give us a bit of an idea of what does that actually tangibly look like in the lives of people that are living in situations of poverty?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. The idea of climate change feels a bit theoretical to many of us in the UK a lot of the time. And there are signs of climate change all around us. If you're a gardener, you will have noticed flowers blooming at the wrong times and earlier. We've had milder winters, and at the beginning of last year, we saw huge floods in the Midlands and in Wales. I'm in Worcester, and there was a lot of flooding around here. And so we're seeing signs of climate change happening here already. We've had the hottest years on records. We had the heat wave last summer with new record temperatures. But yeah, you're right. The reality of climate change is much harder to spot from where we are. What we're seeing around the world is climate change having a very tangible, real impact on people's lives. We've seen storms getting far more powerful. There were two huge cyclones, no, not cyclones, wrong bit of the world, two big hurricanes that hit Central America towards the end of last year. And they caused such devastation. So many areas of Central America had drought for the last few years, and they were celebrating this abundant harvest. And just as they were approaching harvest, these two huge hurricanes hit, and they've wiped out most of the crops and forced thousands of people into camps and temporary shelters. And so for them, climate change is a very real emergency. And on top of coronavirus, it's a dire situation that's in need of support. And then you see droughts and flooding and storms getting more severe all around the world as well. So yeah, since 2016, we've seen hunger increasing because of the ways that climate change is making rain less reliable or destroying people's crops. And so, yeah, it's very real all around the world for so many people, which is why at Tear Fund, we're talking about this so much now.
Yeah, and something I feel is a kind of topic which I hear, and I must admit, it maybe frustrates me slightly, is, you know, are Christians talking about the fact that they don't need to care about creation. They don't need to care about this whole climate change shindig. That's, you know, that the changing climates, it doesn't matter to us in our discipleship as followers of Jesus. And I'm getting the sense that that isn't really the story that we should really be saying as followers of Jesus. That maybe creation care feeds into a bigger area of us in our discipleship. What would you say to people in those particular sort of that are coming up with those particular sort of raising those particular issues?
Yeah, I think at the simplest level, this is about loving our neighbours. If we are to love our neighbours in 2021, then we have to care about the air that they're breathing, the food that they're eating, the water that they're drinking. If we don't engage with those things, then we can't say we're truly loving our neighbours. And with this issue, pushing people back into poverty, making people's lives much harder, forcing people to become refugees, it is very simply a justice issue and a matter of loving our global neighbours to engage with this. But more broadly, this is part of who we are as Christians, is to steward God's creation. His first invitation or commandment to us was to care for this creation that he's given us. And time and again through the Bible, you see God inviting his people to participate in his creation, to steward it well, from the laws in the Old Testament of allowing the land and the animals to rest and recover, to Jesus' invitations to us to spot how God is working and to learn about the character of God from the creation around us, whether that's the power of seeds or the character of birds. Jesus points to creation again and again, saying, if you live well with this, you will discover more of who I am. And then as we move through into the church and to where we are now, we see that part of our calling is to be ministers of reconciliation. And in Colossians, we see that through Jesus' death and resurrection, he's reconciling all things, not just me and all the people, but reconciling all things, all of his creation back to the Creator. And that this is part of the mission of Jesus, to restore all that sin has broken and to make things new. And so actually, as part of our ministry of reconciliation, it looks like reconciling ourselves to that creation and of restoring what is being broken by the ways that we've damaged it. So I'd say it's a core part of justice and of loving our neighbours, but even more broadly, this is part of worshipping a God of justice and a God of all creation, to steward it well and to speak up when we're seeing it being damaged.
Yeah, and I'm always struck when in John 3:16 it talks about for God so loves the world, and in Greek the word world is cosmos. For God so loves all things that he sent his one and only Son. That actually this story isn't our own. I just always have that, you know, from my background, taking out the world and putting in James Pickin, and that makes my faith very much focused on me. But the call, I think of you know, in terms of what this says and what this speaks into the narrative of our own discipleship, is actually for us to turn and to be those ministers of reconciliation, to engage and partner with God in loving the cosmos, you know, all things, and partner with God in being a reconciler in that kind of in those areas. And I think this is a topic which, as we look at creation care, it's not just necessarily about making sure there's not litter on our street, which is, you know, is important, but it's a part of a wider narrative speaking into our own discipleship, of the fact that actually this story isn't for us in our own individual faith. It's that bigger story which I think that, you know, God is calling us into, that story you talked about, that arc of that we see throughout Scripture. Yeah, and I suppose for people watching, that they kind of, maybe they are people that get this, they get that creation care is important, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it. Like what can people do, maybe like in terms of easy steps, that adjustments that people could make to their own lifestyles to kind of bring this narrative more into the forefront of how they live their life?
Yeah, it can be quite overwhelming, can't it, when you start to engage with the scale of the crisis that we're in and think, how on earth do I play my part and join in with what I believe God is doing? And I'd say there's probably there's like three main areas that I would encourage people to engage with. So the first is prayer. Like we believe God acts when we pray, that he invites us to join in with what he's doing through talking with him, interceding and participating in what he's doing by engaging in that kind of spiritual battle as well of pushing against the brokenness in this world and interceding for change. So I say prayer is a big part of this struggle. I was meeting with some people yesterday who really feel like we need a new wave of people interceding and praying about this crisis for breakthroughs in the negotiations that happen and in the way companies operate and in how our culture works. So prayer is a big part of this and shouldn't be underestimated. And I mean, one example for you quickly, at the end of last year, we've been lobbying the government along with lots of other organisations for years about how they spend billions of taxpayers' money on big fossil fuel projects overseas, so huge new oil and gas projects that will lock people into fossil fuels for decades. And we were campaigning and pushing for change, and we thought we were making progress, and then it all got stuck, and we didn't know what to do next. And so our next step, our new strategy, was simply to pray and to ask God to intervene. We'd run out of ideas of how we might do this, and we just came to God on our knees and said, God, would you step in? And within a matter of weeks of us committing to pray about this issue, we saw the issue go from like off the agenda to being talked about. And then we kept praying, and we saw a huge announcement at the end of last year that the UK would be the first major economy in the whole world to stop their support for these huge fossil fuel projects, which we didn't expect to see. It meant we had to rewrite our plans for this year. But it's an amazing example of actually when we come to God in prayer and really believe he acts, we can see amazing things. So I say prayer is a crucial part of this journey. The second would be thinking about the way that we live ourselves. So not becoming a Pharisee about it and thinking if you're not like a zero waste, organic, vegan who lives in a freezing cold house, then you're not doing enough. But of thinking about our lifestyle changes as part of our worship, and of actually saying that my everyday actions can be a way of honouring God, of caring for his creation and participating in what he's doing. I love the Message version of Romans 12, 1 about take your everyday ordinary life, your eating, sleeping, going to work and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering of worship to our creator and our redeemer. And thinking about the ways that we eat, whether we can reduce how much meat we eat, or the ways that we travel, can we cycle more and commit to not flying when flights become more common again? Are there ways that we can honour God in the way that we live and see it as part of our worship? And when we look at it that way, rather than as a big burden, it becomes way more manageable. We can live in a different countercultural, creation caring way because we're doing it as part of going deeper in our journey of discipleship. So pray and think about your own lifestyle. And then third, I'd say we can't just stop in our own house with this. We need to be bold and brave and speak up and challenge those in power. We are rapidly running out of time to limit the worst effects of warming. What happens in the next 9 years is crucial to what life looks like for millions of our neighbours around the world. And so we have to find the courage to speak up and challenge leaders to act much faster on this issue. And so whether that's from signing petitions or as a church contacting your MP, inviting them in and challenging them about what they're doing, or declaring a climate emergency and becoming part of a movement of churches doing that. We last year worked with 10 other organisations, from Arosha to Christian Aid to Operation Noah, to form a toolkit to help churches declare a climate emergency, to find their voice and speak up together. And if that's something that your church could do, then it would be an amazing way to add your voice and call for change. So I'd say don't underestimate prayer. See your lifestyle as a chance to worship God in the everyday decisions, and then be brave enough to speak up and challenge those in power.
Amazing. I think that seems a wonderful place to leave this conversation, with a call to prayer, lifestyle as worship, and action and speaking up on behalf of this issue. So thanks so much, Jack, for joining us on this little short talk. And for those watching, we'll be putting out resources to help you go on this journey as well, as if this is a topic you really want to look into more as a church. And so please do look out on our social media and our various mailings, and on our resources hub as well, the links of which will be sent out along with this video. So thank you ever so much, and thanks, Jack, for joining.